All right, guys, long gestating video for you today. We're talking about Cade oil and Cade wood fragrances. Do you like this note? Are you a fan? It can get pretty smoky, also leathery. So find out about Cade wood, Cade oil fragrances coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sebastian talking to you about the note of Cade, Cade oil, Cade wood. Are you a fan of this note? You know, there are some fragrances that feature this note that I really enjoy that maybe you guys should check out and enjoy as well. Some do tend to get very smoky and very challenging to wear, but I got a really great collection of fragrances here that if you're into the idea of smoky fragrances that go woody, dark, leathery, just imagine putting out the fire at a campfire at the where you've been burning, and then once it's out, that smell that is left is basically what you will get with this note in fragrances. So before I get to the fragrances, if you have a favorite Cade wood or Cade oil fragrance, please add a comment below and let me know what it is so I can find out. But let's go ahead and get started with the list. We're starting off with AMOUAGE. We've got two AMOUAGE fragrances in this video. First of which is Portrayal Man, this one right here. Portrayal Man was a great surprise when it first launched in the late 2010s. It does remind me a bit of Fahrenheit from Dior, but a much more beefed up version of that. The original, not the Parfum, which is more gourmand and vanillic. But this is super intense with Vetiver, the Cade, and then there's also Violet Leaves here, which is what's giving you the idea of Fahrenheit. But super potent. But one of my favorites, definitely both Portrayal Man and Portrayal Woman are great fragrances. Even Portrayal Woman seems to be a bit more on the masculine side. Nothing alike Portrayal Man though, but here we've got a super potent, very spicy, ozonic violet fragrance with a lot of vetiver and the smokiness of the Cade in here, which provides the kind of leathery, dark, woody characteristic. I really like that. It's the violet comes alive, like you'll totally notice it. And maybe sometimes it might remind you of Jeffrey Bean's Gray Flannel a little bit, very distant, but more along the line of something like Fahrenheit for men from the late 80s. So next, going to the house of Gucci, it's a Midnight Stroll, this one right here. This one's a very dark, incensey, smoky fragrance. Obviously, we've got incense here, we've got Cade wood, and we've got cypress. So it's aromatic, it's spicy, very smoky and resinous, and the idea of church incense is there, but also the idea of smoke, a campfire freshly put out. But the cypress note in here provides a bit of a camphor, minty, menthol vibe against the darkness and the resinous touches and even slight leathery touches of the Cade and the incense. So for me, the incense and the Cade wood are dark, smoky, slightly leathery, resinous, but that cypress is brighter. So that contrast giving me a bit of that kind of like, the eucalyptus, like a Hall's Vapor Rub or Hall's, lozenges and things like that, where it opens up your nose, gives you that kind of an effect here with this. So this is a Midnight Stroll from the house of Gucci. Next, going to the house of AKRO. My favorite fragrance from this house, it's Smoke. Absolutely love it. For me, when it's drying down, it does remind me a little bit of Tobacco Vanille because it's got that kind of an effect. And I think you can also layer this with Tobacco Vanille to bring out more smokiness with Tobacco Vanille, because the smokiness is not as strong as it is here. Because in here, we've got that Cade. The Cade wood is in here. So it's giving you that kind of dark, smoky, almost leathery effect, like after the campfire is burned. And against the benzoin and the tobacco, creates a very amazing smoky tobacco experience with sweet touches. And that's what I like about it. The sweet and smoky together with the tobacco works so well. Definitely a really awesome fragrance. My favorite from the line. And I've mentioned the AKRO fragrances tend to be not as beefy as I like the fragrances to be. And that's why I feel like that lends itself to be layered with another fragrance. And since it's complex in the way it smells, Tobacco Vanille is also complex. And since they do kind of remind me of one another, I think they would make great layering partners. We're going to the house of AMOUAGE once again. This is Search. This is a great citrus fragrance, but in it has smoky, incensey touches as well. Of course, it's got the Cade in here as well. I wouldn't say this is the strongest to feature the Cade, but I think it's got enough of it to cut through the juiciness of the citruses here. It's quite bright. There's also Vetiver here. There's Guaiac. There's Frankincense, of course, Elemi. So there is a lemony citrusy edge with this one. So it's bright. It's quite bright, but the smokiness provides that, the Cade provides that smokiness and incensey touches all together. Really wonderful offering. I was surprised how good this is. This came out with Guidance, and I think these two, Guidance and this one, turned out to be my favorites in that 4 fragrance launch together. The next fragrance is from the house of FUSCIUNI. It's BUIO, this one right here. BUIO boy, this one is a very, very dark and smoky and leathery. Because remember I mentioned Cade can come off smelling a bit like dark woods and leather under all that smokiness. So there's also leather here. So this is a line that creates fragrances a bit on the challenging side. So they're not for the faint of heart, but this also has a sexy underlying layer about it, because there's this very, very smoky, aromatic, kind of almost like the camphor touch I was mentioning, like eucalyptus-y. But there's a lot more things happening here. It's got leather, there's Cade, there's lots of musk here, frankincense. There's a lot of ambery touches in here and lots of woods as well, but together, everything is working so beautifully. And the thing is, sometimes a little bit of Cade goes a long way, and what the perfumer has done with the notes here is perfect. He has balanced it out. It's smoky, it's noticeable, but it doesn't overwhelm, It doesn't stand out. It's just a masterfully blended fragrance featuring the Cade. Really, really wonderful offering if you haven't tried BUIO from the house of FUSCIUNI. Let me know if you're familiar with that. So next up, going to the house of DS and Durga. I have 2 DS and Durga fragrances in this video. First of which is one of their enhancers. As you can see right here, it's LEATHERIZE. So this is the second of 2 enhancers for the brand. I don't know what is the first enhancer, which is more of a molecular musky fragrance that's super sexy. Here we've got something so substantial and so intense, I'm not sure I would call it an enhancer. I would call it a fragrance on its own. It's got a lot of Cade, so it's very, very smoky, and it smells of authentic leather, like a shoe factory or a shoe repair store that's got a ton of shoes that's being repaired. That's what I get from it, because it smells like shoes, like the leather and the shoes themselves. Actually really like it. I'm not sure I would wear it, but for me, once in a while to pull this fragrance and to smell it, gives me flashbacks when I was a little kid. I worked in a shoe shop with a relative who owned a shoe store, and it was a shoe designer and things like that. So it kind of gives me those kind of scent memories, but there's a lot of leather here. It's very, very smoky. It smells a bit burned and charred, resinous and ambery, and also animalic, because there's a castoreum in here, but I believe they mention it's a vegan castoreum. So really great if you like the idea of leather fragrance. It's called LEATHERIZE. Again, I don't know how you would wear that with other fragrances, because it's so strong on its own. So it might just take over. But there is another DS and Durga, and it's also featuring Cade. So maybe you can wear those 2 together. We'll talk about it when we get there. But the next fragrance going to the house of ATELIER d'Azur. It's Blue Madeleine, this one right here. And I'm featuring this one here. It does feature the Cade, but it is very toned down. It's just providing a bit of a smokiness for mostly a tea fragrance and a gourmand as well. Warm and spicy, but I really think tea fragrances, become very smooth and cozy. And I like that about it. It's got a very relaxing vibe. Not only do I enjoy drinking tea, and it gives me that kind of an effect, but it also gives it to me here in tea fragrances. The smokiness appears when it's drying down, but up top it's bright. It's juicy. That's the wrong word to use. I don't think it's juicy. There's just a very vibrant effect happening, but milky comes into mind. It's a bit milky. I think the tea ritual or the tea experience has been captured perfectly here. It's a bit gourmand, but not like super strong gourmand, sugary, caramelly. Just a nice balance of tea and maybe cookies, a bit of milk in your tea, spices and warmth and things like that, and it gets smoky and balsamic when it's drying down. So that is Blue Madeleine from the house of ATELIER d'Azur. Then we're going to the house of Miller Harris. It's Staccato, this one right here. Are you guys familiar with this house? This is mostly a tobacco fragrance, and it has leather and lots of smokiness, obviously, with the Cade note. And even though when I first smelled this one, I thought it was a bit too smoky, I've come to enjoy it because it really does balance itself out with the smokiness. There's a lot of warmth here. I feel like it's very warm, spicy. And the smokiness, even though I feel like it's super strong compared to everything else, still is bearable, not like overwhelming. With Leatherize, I have a challenging time wearing that. And that's why I keep saying Leatherize. I'm not sure why you would use it to enhance because it's so strong. Here, it's at the border, that smokiness. So even though it's strong, I think things balance it out, especially the ginger and the cinnamon gives it a more of a, balancing act and tones down the smokiness, even though the smokiness really stands out. But it's in the end a tobacco fragrance with the warmth of the cinnamon. Definitely worth checking out Staccato from the House of Miller Harris. All right, up next, going to the House of Hunk. It's Boxer 006, this one right here. This, once again, is also quite challenging to wear. It's very smoky, but lots of woods and intense notes to create this effect of a boxer, which is bloody and all that kind of stuff happening here. There's a lot of woods here, a lot of spicy notes like cumin appears for the sweat effect, but also Cade providing that smokiness that's prominent in the Cade note. Again, very challenging. There's a sweaty effect happening here with this one. So if you don't like cumin or anything that might smell a bit like sweat, you might want to stay away from this. But also the bandage and all that kind of stuff comes in. So it's quite challenging for me. So you got to be into the idea of this. It's not very inviting. It's just very intense kind of notes together to, give you the idea of a boxer. But the smokiness is also there to kind of like make it smoky and tone down the other notes. But it does get a bit too Band-Aid like. Like imagine just, having your hands or your body bandaged. That definitely is happening there. But the next fragrance is from a house called Hunain. This is Duty in Death. A new house I haven't spoken about on the channel before. Are you guys familiar with this one? It's an indie fragrance. It's also got a lot of oud, but it's so dark and smoky. But not only do they have Cade, they also have birch. If you like the idea of birchwood, check out my video on birch fragrances. It's on the channel. This is the first time I'm doing a Cade video. This is very oudy, very resinous, and very, very dark and smoky. I don't even need to put my nose on it. I'm smelling it. It's just like wafting in air. Lots of woods. It's just a very, very uber masculine fragrance. There's a bit of warmth in there, a bit of booziness, but I feel like the smoky touches of both the birch and the Cade, along with the oud, really, really overwhelm. But it doesn't get too animalic, even on skin. I've only worn it once or twice, spritzing it on to test it out. It doesn't get animalic because there's so much happening here. Everything is just nicely balanced, but it's way overwhelming with the smoky touches, the dark oudy touches and resinous ambery touches. But moving on to the next house, talking about imaginary authors, it's A City on Fire. Now this is the first fragrance I actually started to enjoy the note of Cade, when it was the first time it was highlighted in a fragrance, and it's mentioned on the back here, Cade oil. So that's when I first learned about the note of Cade, and I noticed it in here. It's quite smoky, and I enjoyed it in here. There's a brightness about this fragrance, which I quite like. But in the end, it's the experience of a city that's caught on fire, things on fire, wood on fire, spices and things like that all on fire. But it doesn't overwhelm. It's definitely something I enjoy wearing. As you can see, I've worn quite a bit of this, but this is a bottle from when it first launched, when I bought, I don't remember the dates. It could be almost 10 years old for that fragrance here, but very enjoyable, very ambery. It's a smokiness. The burnt matches note in here is very realistic smelling, but it's super dark and smoky. So you've got to be into those kind of fragrances to appreciate, wearing Cade. But next, going to the House of DS and Durga. Again, this is Mississippi Medicine. And this is what I was thinking later, when we first spoke about Leatherize, I was thinking maybe you might layer these two together. It's from the same brand. It could be similar, similar DNA and things like that. But this also has birch tar in addition to Spanish Cade, is what they say is in here. So this is, it's got those smoky touches quite a bit. But there's the aromatic green woody touches in here as well, the cypress and the pine. I feel like Mississippi Medicine is a bit of a wimp next to Leatherize. So if I was to layer those two together, I would probably have to, I don't know how long Mississippi Medicine's been out, but I think it's one of their older fragrances. And it seems a bit subdued when I smell it with the Leatherize. Yeah, they do work wonderfully together. It adds a more smoky leather effect to all of the kind of, aromatics and spices and, the green woody notes that are in Mississippi Medicine. So it does work together, but you've got to probably triple, quadruple the sprays of Mississippi Medicine next to Leatherize, because as I say, Leatherize is so strong, it only needs a little bit, so not sure why they would call it an enhancer. But moving on to a house called Atelier Oblique, it's Voodoo Flowers, this one right here. Are you guys familiar with this house? So this has notes of leather, Cade, styrax, violet, iris, jasmine, vetiver, sage, citruses. So in the end, it's a leather fragrance, a really enjoyable leather. It's an underrated house that not a lot of people speak about, but it's a bit animalic, but also, the violet is very prominent, so it's got floral touches in here. It's not as overwhelming as the Leatherize, but there are some touches that are slightly similar to it. But once again, Leatherize is just so super potent, and even though this is pretty potent, Leatherize just is intense and in your face, so it's quite animalic because of that. And even though I'm not turned off by the smell, I'm not sure I could wear it. And here with Voodoo Flowers, definitely something I would wear because it's not super intense like Leatherize, if that makes sense to you guys. All right, next up, going to the house of Aides de Venustas, it's Café Tabac. So some fragrances here with the Cade note are more enjoyable to wear in comparison to others. For example, here with Café Tabac, created by Bertrand Duchaufour, is so good. It's such a complex fragrance with tobacco and spices and things like that. So it's just really, really great. There's a lot going on in here. There's, fruity touches. There's woody touches. There's, chocolatey touches. It's just beautifully blended, and it's very, very warm, spicy. And the smokiness is there, just, kind of teasing us. And it's providing the right amount of smokiness next to the, the tobacco and things like that in here. So it's gourmand, but once again, I wouldn't call this like sugary sweet. It's definitely spicy and tobacco-ish. Very warm and smoky. So that's Café Tabac from the house of Aides de Venustas. Next, going to the house of Frappant, it's Bois Blanc. This one right here, White Wood or White Woods. This one also is very easy to wear. It doesn't get smoky until the dry down. Otherwise, it's a very clean take on woods, leaning on the masculine side. And if I didn't mention earlier, a lot of these fragrances are going to lean masculine because of the types of notes they use in here. There's quite a bit of something patchouli-like in here as well, and also musky ambroxan, but it does get smoky when it's drying down. It's quite bright. Definitely the idea of white woods or Bois Blanc is prominent here, but wait until the smokiness appears on the skin in the dry down for Bois Blanc from the house of Frappant. And last but not least, the 16th and final fragrance I'm going to speak about today is from the house of Arquiste. It's L'Or de Louis, this one right here. Are you guys familiar with this one? So in the end, this is a kind of a vintage take on Orange Blossom, the Orange Blossom note, but there's a bit of a smoky undertone here when it's drying down. There's also a resinous accord dating from the 17th century in here. So in the end, it's created in a way that's a bit vintage, but, modern at the same time, but quite smoky. And that smokiness doesn't appear until it's drying down. But there's a lot of orange blossom here. There's jasmine, there's bergamot, honey, orris, musk, cedar, firewood smoke, Cade. Wonderful fragrance. If you're looking for your new orange blossom fragrance, definitely try this one. This is so good. So good. Just be warned, it does get smoky when it's drying down because that's what the fragrance is all about. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. 16 Cade wood or Cade oil fragrances. Let me know if you're familiar with any of them. Let me know if you have a favorite here that I mentioned. And also let me know if you have a favorite outside of what I've spoken about today that I should check out and I haven't spoken about myself. Add a comment below so I can find out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video, guys. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.